Introduction. There is a moment, a single heartbeat, between stimulus and response. Most of us miss it. We've been trained to. In a world that glorifies speed, outrage, and instant feedback, we're taught that to be silent is to be weak, to pause is to be indecisive, and to not react is to be indifferent. But what if the truth is the opposite? What if your greatest strength lies in that pause? What if power is not found in shouting back, defending yourself, or proving your point, but in choosing not to engage the chaos at all? What if real transformation happens not when you fight back, but when you no longer feel the need to? We suffer most not from what happens to us, but from how we react to it. Think about it. How many times have you said something in anger and regretted it moments later? How often have you felt exhausted? Not because life was overwhelming, but because you were emotionally caught in everyone else's noise. How many opportunities for peace and clarity have been lost because you jumped into a reaction instead of standing in stillness? Reactivity is the currency of modern life. Social media, news cycles, toxic relationships, office politics, everywhere you look, someone is trying to pull you into their storm. And for years, I lived in that storm. I was quick to defend myself, easily offended, chronically overstimulated, and constantly burnt out. Until one day I stopped. Not because I gave up, but because I woke up. I started to realize that every time I reacted emotionally, I gave away a piece of my power. I let someone else control my peace, my energy, my presence. I was living like a puppet pulled by strings I didn't even know existed. And so, I started to listen more. I learned to breathe before responding. I started to question why I was triggered, and more importantly, who I became when I allowed myself to be. I learned the quiet but life-changing art of non-reaction. This is not an audiobook about silence in the face of injustice. This is not about being passive, numb, or indifferent. This is about choosing your response from a place of consciousness instead of emotion. It's about staying rooted while the world tries to shake you. It's about becoming so deeply anchored in yourself that no storm can shake you. You don't need to shout to be heard. You don't need to explain yourself to everyone. You don't need to attend every argument you're invited to. In fact, your presence can be louder than your words, your stillness stronger than your defenses. We live in a world that's addicted to noise, but your peace, your true power, is found in silence, in choosing not to react. If you're ready to stop being emotionally hijacked by every trigger, then let's begin. Chapter 1. Why we react and what it's doing to us. In the rapid currents of modern life, we are often swept away by a torrent of emotions, impulses, and knee-jerk reactions. This state of living, characterized by immediate responses to stimuli, is what can be called a reactive mind. It is a way of thinking and behaving that is conditioned over time, not by deliberate choice or self-awareness, but by the invisible and persistent influence of societal forces. Understanding how society shapes the reactive mind is essential to reclaiming our inner power, particularly the transformative power of not reacting. From the earliest stages of childhood, we are immersed in environments that reward immediate compliance and discourage pause or reflection. In school, quick answers are often praised over thoughtful ones. In family dynamics, children are taught to obey rather than to inquire. Social expectations value conformity over contemplation and speed over depth. This creates an inner patterning, a belief that responding quickly is not only necessary, but virtuous. We are trained to believe that our value lies in our responsiveness, our ability to jump, to reply, to assert, to defend, immediately and often without examination. Technology has only intensified this conditioning. Social media platforms thrive on instant engagement. Likes, shares, comments. Notifications buzz with urgency, suggesting that every message and every update demands a response. In this hyper-connected world, silence is equated with absence or disinterest, and delay with incompetence or disrespect. The culture of immediacy seeps into our psyche, subtly rewiring our neural pathways to associate reaction with relevance. We become addicted to the stimulus-response cycle, mistaking it for genuine communication or connection. Beyond technology, media and entertainment also contribute to this conditioning. In films and television, characters who hesitate or reflect are often portrayed as weak or indecisive, while those who act impulsively are celebrated as bold and heroic. Advertisements manipulate our desires by creating a sense of urgency. Act now. Limited time only. Don't miss out. This sense of urgency, repeated relentlessly, cultivates a reactive posture in the mind. We begin to feel that hesitation is dangerous, and that any action, is safe. Social norms further cement this mindset. We are expected to form opinions quickly and express them forcefully. Nuance is often lost in favor of strong stances and polarized views. In such an environment, thoughtful silence can seem like apathy, and calm observation can be misunderstood as weakness. The reactive mind becomes a default setting, a mode of being that seems normal, even necessary, to function in society. The danger lies in the fact that the reactive mind is not truly ours. It is a product of programming, shaped by systems and structures that do not prioritize our well-being. A reactive mind does not create, it repeats. It does not reflect, it mirrors. It does not question, it obeys. In moments of stress, conflict, or uncertainty, the reactive mind defaults to learned patterns: defense, attack, avoidance, or appeasement. It thrives on emotion over reason, instinct over insight. But there is a cost. When we live reactively, we lose touch with our deeper wisdom. We become prisoners of our triggers, slaves to external stimuli. We may speak before understanding, act before thinking, and judge before knowing. Relationships suffer, decisions are clouded, and inner peace becomes elusive. Over time, the reactive mind can lead to chronic stress, burnout, and a fragmented sense of self. To reclaim our agency, we must first see how deeply this conditioning runs. We must recognize that the impulse to react is not an inherent flaw, but a learned behavior. Society teaches us to equate reactivity with strength and passivity with weakness, but this is a false dichotomy. True power lies in the space between stimulus and response. It is in this space that we find freedom, clarity, and the ability to choose a conscious path. The power of not reacting is not about apathy or inaction. It is about cultivating presence. It is the ability to witness a situation fully, to feel the emotions that arise, and to respond from a grounded place rather than from compulsion. It is about stepping out of the autopilot of cultural programming and into the sovereignty of mindful awareness. The journey away from the reactive mind is a journey toward wholeness. It invites us to unlearn what society has taught and to rediscover what has always been within us: the power to pause, to reflect, and to choose with intention. The emotional, mental, and physical toll of overreacting. Overreacting, though often impulsive and unintentional, can quietly erode the well-being of a person on multiple levels: emotionally, mentally, and physically. When we react with intensity to every irritation, disagreement, or perceived slight, we place ourselves in a perpetual state of inner turbulence. The immediate emotional consequences might feel like a justified release, a momentary validation of anger, frustration, or fear. But in the long term, overreacting chips away at emotional stability. It cultivates a life marked by anxiety, volatility, and regret. Emotionally, overreacting often leaves individuals feeling drained and ashamed once the intensity subsides. There's a certain remorse that lingers after saying something harsh in the heat of the moment or making a snap decision driven by anger. This can create cycles of guilt and defensiveness, where one becomes trapped between the emotional high of reactivity and the emotional low of its consequences. Trust can suffer in relationships, both personal and professional, because those around us begin to anticipate volatility rather than calm. It becomes harder for others to approach us honestly or openly, not out of lack of love, but from fear of unpredictable emotional backlash. Mentally, overreacting rewires our thinking patterns. The mind, conditioned to jump to conclusions or see threats in every disagreement, becomes less reflective and more reactive. This heightened vigilance might feel like a defense mechanism, but in truth, it distorts perception. Instead of assessing situations objectively, the mind becomes a breeding ground for assumptions, catastrophizing, and misinterpretations. Such a mental state is exhausting. It leaves little room for clarity, creativity, or strategic thinking. Our ability to pause, reflect, and make wise choices diminishes because the mental space required for discernment is consumed by emotional overdrive. Physically, the toll is no less significant. The body doesn't distinguish between real danger and perceived threats caused by emotional outbursts. When we overreact, our nervous system springs into fight or flight mode. Cortisol and adrenaline flood the body, increasing heart rate, tightening muscles, and straining the cardiovascular system. If this becomes habitual, it can lead to chronic stress, which weakens the immune system, disrupts sleep, causes headaches, digestive issues, and raises the risk of heart disease. Essentially, the body remains in a state of readiness for danger that never actually comes, gradually wearing down its resilience. What often goes unnoticed is how overreacting detaches us from the present moment. It anchors us in either the past, reliving offenses, or an imagined future where we brace for the next conflict. This constant state of emotional hypervigilance robs us of peace and connection. It places us on the defensive, making it difficult to listen, empathize, or simply be. In contrast, not reacting allows space. It creates a moment between stimulus and response where choice lives. That moment is where power, clarity, and peace begin. Choosing not to react doesn't mean becoming passive or indifferent. It means becoming aware. It means recognizing that every reaction costs energy, attention, and emotion, and that not every situation is worth that price. The discipline of restraint fosters a steadier emotional baseline, a sharper mind, and a healthier body. It opens the door to responding with intention instead of impulse, with understanding instead of assumption. The illusion of control versus the reality of chaos. The illusion of control is one of the most pervasive psychological traps we fall into. It whispers the comforting lie that if we just plan well enough, speak carefully enough, anticipate every possible outcome, we can steer life in the direction we choose. This belief is seductive because it provides a sense of security and mastery in a world that often feels unpredictable and indifferent to our desires. We cling to routines, rituals, and reactions that give us the feeling we are managing our lives, when in truth, so much of what happens lies far beyond our influence. Control, in this context, is less about actual power and more about our desperate attempt to feel grounded in the face of chaos. We check the weather before leaving home, rehearse conversations in our heads, obsess over the right time to make a move, or spiral into overthinking every detail of a relationship or decision. These actions feel productive. They give us a false sense of agency. Yet the universe rarely obliges our desire for predictability. Life can change in a phone call. A job can vanish. A loved one can leave. A plan can collapse despite meticulous preparation. Amid this reality, chaos asserts itself as the true backdrop of existence. Not chaos in the sense of complete disorder, but rather an ongoing reminder that uncertainty is not only unavoidable, it is natural. The systems we depend on are more fragile than we admit. The people we trust are just as uncertain as we are. The world operates on 1,000 variables we cannot see, let alone control. The more we struggle against this truth, the more we suffer. We resist change, we panic in discomfort, and we react impulsively to every disruption, believing that by acting swiftly or loudly, we are reasserting our grip. But there is a deeper power in not reacting. In a chaotic world, the greatest strength lies in restraint. When you stop trying to control every outcome, you begin to understand the freedom of presence. Not reacting does not mean passivity. It means choosing when and how to engage with what life throws at you. It means observing the storm without becoming the storm. When you stop reacting to every perceived threat or inconvenience, you become less entangled in the drama of what isn't real and more attuned to what truly is. Letting go of control opens up space for clarity. In that space, decisions are made not from fear or urgency, but from awareness. You begin to see that many situations resolve themselves without your interference. Many arguments fizzle without your input. Many emotions pass like weather if you don't hold on to them. By not reacting, you allow the natural intelligence of life to unfold, rather than constantly imposing your will in ways that often lead to more chaos, not less. This practice is not easy. It requires confronting the ego's need to be in charge, to be right, to be safe. It asks you to sit with discomfort, to let go of the fantasy that you can engineer the perfect life. But in surrendering that illusion, you gain something far more valuable: peace. You begin to live with the awareness that you are not in control, and that's okay. You don't need to be. The power lies not in domination, but in discernment, in knowing what is yours to influence and what is not, in choosing stillness when the world is shouting for your reaction. The illusion of control crumbles in the presence of true acceptance. Chaos is not the enemy. It is simply the canvas upon which life paints its unpredictable beauty. And when you stop reacting to every brushstroke, you begin to see the whole picture more clearly. You learn to flow, to respond only when necessary, and to rest in the quiet confidence that even in disorder, you are exactly where you need to be. Why mastering non-reaction is not weakness, but power. Mastering non-reaction is often misunderstood in a world that prizes quick responses, assertiveness, and the visible demonstration of strength. The instinct to react, to speak out immediately, defend oneself, or strike back, can feel natural and justified, especially in situations charged with emotion. But the true power often lies in restraint. Choosing not to react is not a sign of weakness or passivity. Rather, it is a reflection of deep internal strength, discipline, and clarity. Non-reaction begins with awareness. When something triggers us, be it an insult, an injustice, a misunderstanding, our initial impulse is emotional. Anger, fear, or pride might surge to the surface, and our body readies itself for confrontation. Reacting in this state tends to escalate the situation, cloud our judgment, and often leads to regret. But when we pause and choose not to act from that initial surge, we create space. In that space, we find the opportunity to respond with intention instead of impulse. This space is where power resides. It is the realm of choice. By not reacting, we reclaim our authority over ourselves. We are no longer puppets to external events or to other people's provocations. Instead, we become grounded, anchored in our values and vision, rather than tossed about by emotional waves. This form of self-mastery conveys an unshakable presence. Others sense it. They may not always understand it, but they recognize something unmovable and commanding in someone who doesn't flinch, over-explain, or retaliate. There is also immense dignity in non-reaction. It is the quiet confidence of someone who knows they don't have to prove themselves at every turn. This person isn't driven by ego or the need for validation. Their calm becomes their armor. Their silence can be louder than words, conveying strength without aggression. In a world that equates loudness with power, stillness becomes a radical act of defiance. Non-reaction also sharpens perception. When we are not consumed by the urge to respond, we listen more deeply. We observe more clearly. We begin to notice the intentions behind words, the dynamics at play, and the truth behind appearances. This clarity allows us to act, when we choose to, with precision and effectiveness. It transforms our actions from emotional outbursts to conscious decisions. The energy once used to defend, attack, or control is now redirected into meaningful expression and purposeful living. Not reacting doesn't mean doing nothing. It means doing the right thing at the right time in the right way. It means waiting until the noise has settled, until your emotions have cooled, and until you can see the situation for what it truly is. It is a calculated form of engagement. This kind of discipline often brings the highest rewards, not just in interpersonal relationships, but in leadership, business, and personal growth. Those who master non-reaction often rise above the chaos and are trusted for their judgment and equanimity. In spiritual and philosophical traditions across the world, non-reaction is a mark of wisdom. It is the essence of equanimity in Stoicism, the non-attachment in Buddhism, the turning the other cheek in Christian teachings. Each points to the same truth, that inner stillness is a fortress, not a cage. It is from that stillness that one can engage with the world not reactively, but creatively and consciously. The distinction between reacting and responding. The distinction between reacting and responding is subtle yet profound. Reacting is immediate. It is driven by emotion, habit, or instinct. A reaction often bypasses rational thought, emerging from a place of survival or ego. When someone insults us, for example, our knee-jerk reaction might be to lash back, defend ourselves, or retreat in anger. This is not a choice made after reflection. It is automatic. Reactivity is often fueled by old wounds, unresolved fears, and unconscious programming. It tends to escalate situations, create misunderstandings, and reinforce cycles of negativity. In contrast, responding is conscious. It involves a pause, a breath of space between the stimulus and the action. In that space, we find our power. A response is rooted in awareness, guided by intention, and aligned with our values. It is not a suppression of emotion, but a channeling of it. When we respond, we consider the broader context, the consequences, and the best course of action. Instead of attacking when criticized, we might choose to clarify, ask questions, or simply let the comment go if it doesn't serve us. The power of not reacting is not about passivity or weakness. It is a display of inner strength. Choosing not to react impulsively allows us to remain grounded and centered, even when the world around us feels chaotic. It gives us the upper hand in emotionally volatile situations, not to control others, but to remain in control of ourselves. That self-control fosters respect, both for ourselves and from others. Not reacting also preserves our energy. Every time we engage in reactive behavior, we give away a part of our mental and emotional strength. Over time, this can lead to burnout, regret, and disconnection. But by cultivating the discipline to pause, observe, and choose our next move wisely, we build resilience. We train the mind to stay calm in the storm, to rise above petty conflicts, and to act with clarity and purpose. Responding requires presence. It asks us to step into the moment fully, to notice our thoughts and emotions without being ruled by them. Mindfulness plays a crucial role here. Through mindful awareness, we recognize when we're being triggered and can gently bring ourselves back to a place of choice. It's in this space that wisdom emerges, the ability to act in ways that serve our long-term well-being rather than our short-term ego. Life presents endless opportunities to practice this distinction. A frustrating email, a partner's harsh words, a driver cutting us off in traffic. Each is an invitation to either react blindly or respond wisely. The more we lean into the habit of responding rather than reacting, the more empowered and emotionally free we become. We no longer live at the mercy of external events or other people's behavior. Instead, we live by design, guided by a quiet but unshakable inner compass. Chapter 2. The Psychology Behind Reactivity. Understanding and mastering emotional triggers is central to developing the power of not reacting, a state of mental clarity and emotional discipline that can transform relationships, decision-making, and self-perception. Emotional triggers are stimuli, whether words, actions, or memories, that activate intense emotional responses. These reactions happen almost instantaneously, often bypassing conscious thought. This rapid response is part of the brain's survival mechanism. The amygdala, an almond-shaped structure in the brain's limbic system, plays a crucial role in processing emotions, particularly fear and threat. When it detects something perceived as dangerous or emotionally significant, it signals a fight-or-flight response before the rational brain, the prefrontal cortex, has had a chance to assess the situation. This automatic system is essential in real danger, but becomes problematic when applied to modern life's emotional landscape. A critical comment from a coworker or a dismissive tone from a loved one can activate the same neural circuits as a genuine threat, leading to overreactions that escalate conflict or lead to regret. What makes emotional triggers especially potent is their connection to earlier emotional wounds, often formed in childhood. A person who grew up feeling dismissed may have a hair-trigger sensitivity to being ignored. The emotional charge is disproportionate not because the present moment is extreme, but because it reactivates the pain of the past. The power of not reacting arises from developing the ability to observe these emotional impulses without immediately acting on them. This is where neuroscience and mindfulness intersect. Studies have shown that mindfulness meditation strengthens the prefrontal cortex and enhances its regulatory control over the amygdala. This means that with regular practice, individuals can create a pause between stimulus and response. That pause is the birthplace of conscious choice. In that space, one can examine the trigger without judgment, recognize the story attached to it, and choose whether or not to engage. This doesn't mean suppressing emotions or becoming passive. Instead, it means responding with intention rather than reacting from impulse. The practice of non-reaction allows individuals to reclaim their agency. Rather than being controlled by emotional programming, they become observers of their internal landscape, able to discern between the reality of the moment and the projection of past pain. This ability has profound implications. In relationships, it leads to less conflict and deeper understanding. In leadership, it creates room for thoughtful decision-making under pressure. In personal growth, it becomes the foundation of emotional resilience. Learning not to react doesn't mean becoming indifferent. It means cultivating emotional intelligence, the ability to recognize emotions, understand their roots, and navigate them skillfully. Physiologically, the process involves engaging the parasympathetic nervous system, which calms the body and supports cognitive processing. Breathing exercises, grounding techniques, and mindful awareness all contribute to this shift. Over time, these practices can rewire neural pathways through neuroplasticity, making calm observation a new default rather than reactivity. The power of not reacting doesn't lie in detachment, but in awareness. When we understand our triggers, we begin to understand ourselves. And when we choose how to respond rather than surrendering to our initial reactions, we step into a deeper level of personal freedom and emotional mastery. How childhood, trauma, ego, and identity shape our reactions. The way we respond to life's challenges is deeply influenced by a complex interplay of factors rooted in our earliest experiences and the fundamental parts of who we are. Childhood, trauma, ego, and identity are central forces that shape how we perceive the world and how we choose to react, or not react, in moments of stress or conflict. Understanding this dynamic is key to grasping the profound power of not reacting. From the very beginning of life, childhood lays the groundwork for our emotional patterns. The environment in which we grow up, the type of care we receive, and the emotional availability of our caregivers profoundly affect our sense of safety and stability. When a child experiences consistent warmth and security, they are more likely to develop a calm and measured approach to difficulties later in life. In contrast, childhood marked by unpredictability, neglect, or harsh discipline often seeds a hypervigilant response to perceived threats. These early emotional imprints become the unconscious filters through which all later experiences are interpreted. As a result, the way we react in adulthood often echoes the unresolved emotions and conditioned responses embedded in our early years. Trauma, whether overt or subtle, intensifies these reaction patterns by embedding a deeper layer of emotional charge beneath the surface. Traumatic experiences disrupt our nervous system's natural regulation, often locking us into survival modes like fight, flight, or freeze. When triggered, these responses can arise automatically, bypassing our rational mind entirely. This makes it difficult to choose how to respond consciously because the body and mind are caught in an old loop of distress. Trauma doesn't just influence what we react to, but how intensely and automatically we do so. The deeper the wound, the stronger the urge to respond defensively or reactively, often before we have the chance to reflect or choose an alternative approach. Ego also plays a critical role in shaping our reactions. The ego is essentially our self-image, the story we tell ourselves about who we are, what we deserve, and how others should treat us. When this self-image feels threatened, it can provoke defensive, reactive behaviors designed to protect the fragile sense of self. Ego-driven reactions are often automatic and fueled by pride, fear of humiliation, or a need to maintain control and superiority. When the ego perceives an insult or challenge, It can trigger an intense emotional storm that clouds our judgment and escalates conflict. This makes the practice of not reacting not only an act of emotional mastery, but also an exercise in transcending ego's grip, allowing space for calm awareness instead of impulsive defense. Identity, too, is deeply intertwined with how we react. Our sense of identity comprises our beliefs, values, roles, and the collective narratives we belong to, cultural, social, and personal. When events or interactions challenge these identities, they can provoke a reaction as a form of self-preservation. For example, someone who strongly identifies with being competent may react defensively to criticism, while another person whose identity is tied to being kind may react with guilt or over-apology. Identity provides the context in which our emotional triggers become activated, and it shapes not only what we react to but the style and intensity of that reaction. Because identity is often constructed through years of experience and social conditioning, it can be deeply ingrained and difficult to shift. The power of not reacting lies in breaking free from these automatic patterns forged by childhood experiences, trauma, ego defenses, and identity attachments. When we choose not to react impulsively, we create a space between stimulus and response, a space where awareness, reflection, and conscious choice can arise. This pause allows us to respond in alignment with our deeper values rather than knee-jerk impulses. It is a form of emotional freedom, where we reclaim the power over our own mind and actions instead of giving that power away to old wounds and conditioned reflexes. Mastering the power of not reacting requires nurturing a heightened sense of self-awareness and emotional regulation. It calls for recognizing the ways childhood programming and trauma influence our automatic responses, acknowledging the ego's need for protection, and understanding the role of identity in shaping what we take personally. Only then can we cultivate the inner resilience to pause, breathe, and respond with intention rather than reaction. This process is not about suppressing emotions or becoming detached, but about responding from a grounded place of clarity and strength. The hidden desire to defend, control, and be right. The hidden desire to defend, control, and be right is a deeply rooted aspect of human psychology that often operates beneath the surface of our conscious awareness. It is tied closely to our sense of identity, security, and the way we navigate social dynamics. When we find ourselves in situations that challenge our beliefs, values, or sense of self, this desire often triggers a strong internal response, a compulsion to protect ourselves by asserting control, defending our position, and proving that we are right. This impulse comes from a fundamental need to maintain stability and avoid vulnerability. Being right is not just about facts or logic. It is tied to our self-worth and how we believe others perceive us. When we feel threatened or challenged, our mind instinctively rallies to protect that self-image. Defensiveness arises as a shield to keep uncomfortable feelings like doubt, shame, or insecurity at bay. Similarly, the urge to control stems from a fear of chaos or unpredictability. Control offers an illusion of safety by giving us the sense that we can manage outcomes, steer conversations, or shape others' opinions to fit our expectations. What makes this dynamic so powerful, and often problematic, is how automatic and unconscious it can be. These desires often fuel reactive behaviors that escalate conflict rather than resolve it. Instead of listening openly or stepping back to consider alternative perspectives, we find ourselves caught in a cycle of reaction, counter-reaction, and entrenched positions. This cycle can create tension, misunderstandings, and emotional distance in relationships. It also limits our capacity for growth because clinging too tightly to being right can close us off to learning, empathy, and change. However, recognizing this hidden desire is the first step toward breaking free from its grip. The power of not reacting lies in cultivating awareness of these impulses without immediately acting on them. When we pause and observe our urge to defend or control, we create space for conscious choice rather than automatic reaction. This space allows us to respond with greater wisdom, empathy, and flexibility. It shifts the focus from winning a battle of opinions to fostering connection and understanding. Choosing not to react impulsively does not mean suppressing our thoughts or feelings. Instead, it means holding them with mindful attention and deciding how best to express them. It involves embracing uncertainty and the possibility that we might not always be right or have the final say. This surrender of control can be deeply uncomfortable, but also profoundly liberating. It opens the door to deeper dialogue, authentic relationships, and inner peace. Awareness as the first step to liberation from impulsive behavior. Awareness is the cornerstone of liberation from impulsive behavior, acting as the gateway to reclaiming control over our actions and reactions. At its core, awareness is the act of paying attention, without judgment, to what is happening inside and around us. It involves recognizing the thoughts, emotions, bodily sensations, and external triggers that prompt a reflexive reaction. This recognition is not passive. It requires an active and deliberate presence of mind. The moment we become aware that an impulse is forming, we create a space between stimulus and response. This space is where freedom resides. It is the pause that allows us to choose how to respond rather than being swept away by habitual or conditioned reactions. Without awareness, impulses operate like hidden currents beneath the surface of our consciousness. They steer us in directions we may later regret, causing harm to ourselves or others, and perpetuating cycles of stress, conflict, and dissatisfaction. The absence of awareness means we are, in essence, slaves to our immediate urges and emotional waves. But with awareness, we start to observe these currents without immediately jumping in, which gradually weakens their power over us. Cultivating awareness transforms the internal landscape. It shifts us from living on autopilot to living with intention. We start to see patterns in our behavior, identifying specific triggers such as stress, fear, frustration, or social pressure that ignite impulsive responses. This understanding is crucial because it demystifies our reactions. They're no longer mysterious or uncontrollable phenomena, but events that follow discernible patterns. This knowledge empowers us to intervene before the impulse becomes an action. Awareness also deepens our understanding of the emotions that fuel impulsive behavior. Impulses often arise from unprocessed feelings like anger, anxiety, or desire. When we are aware, we can acknowledge these emotions rather than deny or suppress them. This acknowledgement diminishes their urgency and intensity, making it easier to respond with calmness rather than reactionary force. Awareness encourages a gentle curiosity about oneself. Instead of harsh self-judgment, when we do react impulsively, awareness fosters compassion and learning. We begin to see impulses not as moral failings, but as signals inviting attention and care. This compassionate stance reduces shame and guilt, which often feed into reactive cycles, and replaces them with opportunities for growth and change. The cultivation of awareness is often nurtured through mindfulness practices, simple yet powerful techniques that train the mind to stay present. As mindfulness deepens, it enhances the capacity to witness impulses as transient mental events rather than commands that must be obeyed. This witnessing attitude is the essence of the power not to react. It creates a mental refuge where clarity, choice, and self-mastery can flourish. Awareness also extends outward, enabling us to recognize how our environment and relationships influence impulsive tendencies. It reveals social cues, cultural conditioning, and interpersonal dynamics that may provoke automatic responses. By bringing these external factors into conscious view, we gain the ability to adapt or disengage rather than react destructively. Awareness is liberation because it restores the freedom to choose. It breaks the cycle of automaticity and empowers us to respond from a place of clarity and intentionality. This freedom is transformative. Not only does it improve personal well-being, but it enhances our relationships, decision-making, and overall quality of life. In the journey toward mastering the power of not reacting, awareness stands as the essential first step, the seed from which all lasting change grows. Chapter 3. The Strength in Stillness. What non-reaction really looks like is a calm and grounded presence in the face of challenges, provocations, or conflict. It's not about shutting down or retreating, but rather about maintaining an inner equilibrium. Someone practicing non-reaction is fully aware of what's happening around them and within them, yet they choose not to be swept away by impulsive emotions or reflexive responses. This requires a deep level of mindfulness, where one observes thoughts and feelings as passing events rather than directives demanding immediate action. Far from being passive, non-reaction is an active engagement with reality on a higher level. It often involves recognizing the futility or harm of reacting in certain ways. For example, when confronted with criticism or anger, the non-reactive person doesn't immediately defend, attack, or withdraw. Instead, they listen without judgment, allowing space for the other person's emotions without getting entangled in them. This doesn't mean they accept everything blindly or suppress their own feelings. Rather, they hold a balanced stance that enables clarity and thoughtful decision-making. Non-reaction also entails patience and emotional resilience. It is about resisting the urge to respond out of habit or ego. The strength lies in choosing silence or measured words, rather than impulsive bursts that often escalate conflict. This kind of power can disarm aggression, diffuse tension, and open the door for constructive dialogue. It's a demonstration of mastery over one's inner world, showing that one is not at the mercy of external circumstances or other people's moods. Non-reaction does not mean ignoring injustice or being indifferent to important issues. It's not a form of disengagement from reality, but a strategic and conscious engagement with it. When someone responds from a place of non-reaction, their actions tend to be more thoughtful, purposeful, and effective. They act from wisdom rather than reactivity, which often leads to more sustainable and meaningful outcomes. Non-reaction is a form of emotional intelligence. It requires self-awareness, self-regulation, and empathy. The person who practices it understands that reacting impulsively rarely serves their long-term well-being or relationships. They cultivate a space between stimulus and response, a space where choice resides. This space allows for a response that aligns with their values and long-term goals, rather than short-term emotional impulses. The power of not reacting lies in reclaiming control over one's own mind and emotions. It's a form of inner freedom, where external events no longer dictate one's emotional state. This freedom is not about being unaffected, but about choosing how to be affected and how to act. Non-reaction, therefore, is an empowering stance, a quiet strength that radiates confidence, wisdom, and peace amid the noise and chaos of life. Leaders and everyday people who chose silence over chaos. Consider the example of Mahatma Gandhi, a towering figure whose commitment to nonviolence and silent resistance altered the course of history. Gandhi's method of satyagraha, truth force, was built on the principle that reacting violently or with anger to oppression only perpetuates more violence. Instead, by maintaining calm, patience, and silent endurance, he mobilized millions and achieved monumental political change. His silence was not passive, but an active, powerful stance that disarmed his opponents and inspired followers worldwide. Gandhi's story illustrates how silence can be a deliberate form of protest and strength, not weakness. Another example is the ancient Chinese philosopher Lao Tzu, whose teachings in the Tao Te Ching often emphasize the value of silence and non-action, Wu Wei, in navigating the complexities of life. Lao Tzu advocated for a life of simplicity, humility, and stillness, suggesting that excessive reaction and force often lead to chaos. His wisdom encourages leaders and individuals alike to find power in quietude, to flow with circumstances rather than fight them, and to achieve more by doing less. This philosophy underscores how silence and measured responses can create harmony, where impulsive reactions would breed conflict. In a different cultural context, Nelson Mandela's approach during and after his imprisonment highlights the strength of silence and measured reaction. Faced with brutal oppression, Mandela chose not to respond with bitterness or revenge. Instead, his patience and refusal to react with hatred allowed him to become a unifying symbol for reconciliation and peace in South Africa. His silence in moments when others might have erupted in anger was a profound political tool, enabling a transition from apartheid to democracy without widespread chaos. Even in the realm of business and leadership, the power of not reacting hastily is a critical trait. Leaders who maintain composure during crises or provocations often guide their organizations more effectively than those who respond impulsively. The story of Abraham Lincoln during the American Civil War offers an illustration of this principle. Despite immense pressures and provocations, Lincoln's tendency to listen carefully, remain silent when necessary, and avoid rash decisions helped preserve the Union. His ability to resist the temptation to react angrily or hastily preserved his credibility and allowed him to navigate an extraordinarily turbulent era. The wisdom of silence is not limited to renowned historical figures. Everyday people also embody this power in meaningful ways. In personal relationships, for example, the choice to remain silent rather than respond angrily to a loved one's hurtful words can prevent escalation and promote understanding. Stories from ordinary individuals often reveal how pausing before reacting, choosing silence, allows emotions to settle and leads to more thoughtful communication later. This everyday practice of restraint nurtures peace and emotional resilience. In social movements and protests, many participants understand the strategic power of silence as well. Moments of silent demonstration, such as vigils or moments of quiet reflection, convey profound messages without a single word. This form of silent protest can create an atmosphere that words might not achieve, one of solemnity, respect, or deep conviction that invites reflection rather than reaction. Silence in these contexts speaks louder than shouted slogans or reactive outbursts. Religious traditions also often highlight the value of silence. Monastic communities across faiths embrace silence as a spiritual discipline, seeing it as a path to inner clarity, peace, and divine connection. The silence they cultivate is not emptiness, but a powerful presence, an intentional withdrawal from the noise of the world to foster wisdom and compassion. This silence acts as a buffer against the chaos of external events, strengthening their capacity to respond with grace rather than reactivity. The power of silence is a universal lesson. Sometimes the greatest strength lies not in speaking or reacting, but in knowing when to hold one's tongue and embrace stillness amid the noise. The power of the pause. The power of the pause is a subtle yet profound force in human experience, one that often goes unnoticed, but holds the potential to transform moments, decisions, and even entire lives. At its core, it's about resisting the immediate impulse to react and instead allowing space, sometimes just a breath, a heartbeat, or a few seconds, for reflection, perspective, and choice. These micro-moments, fleeting as they may be, possess the capacity to change everything because they interrupt the automatic flow of emotion and habit that often dictates our actions. When we don't pause, we tend to respond based on instinct or emotion, which can lead to regret, conflict, or missed opportunities. A reaction born out of anger, fear, or anxiety might escalate a situation, while a hasty decision can close doors we might later wish were still open. Conversely, when we cultivate the habit of pausing, we create a sacred space where the mind and heart align, where clarity replaces chaos. This pause allows us to access a deeper level of awareness, giving room for empathy, creativity, and calmness to emerge. This micro-moment of stillness acts like a reset button, breaking the momentum of emotional reactivity. It can turn a heated argument into a conversation, a moment of frustration into a chance for understanding, or a snap judgment into thoughtful consideration. The pause is not just a moment of silence, but a powerful act of self-mastery and emotional intelligence. It transforms how we relate to ourselves and others by enabling us to respond with intention rather than react out of habit. The impact of these pauses extends far beyond interpersonal interactions. In high-stakes environments such as leadership, crisis management, or creativity, the ability to hold space before reacting can determine the quality of outcomes. Leaders who pause before making decisions can weigh options more effectively, anticipate consequences, and inspire trust by demonstrating calm under pressure. Artists and innovators often speak of moments of stillness where ideas crystallize, a mental pause that opens the door to breakthrough thinking. The power of the pause is deeply linked to mindfulness, the practice of being present. When we pause, we anchor ourselves in the present moment, which is the only place where real choice exists. This anchoring reduces anxiety about the future and regret about the past, giving a more grounded perspective on life's challenges. It allows for emotional regulation and strengthens resilience, helping us bounce back from adversity with greater ease. In a world that values speed, productivity, and instant responses, pausing may feel countercultural or even risky. Yet, it is precisely this counterintuitive action that brings balance. The pause reminds us that not every moment requires immediate action, and that sometimes the most powerful thing we can do is nothing at all, for just a brief instant. This stillness can spark transformation, leading to more thoughtful relationships, wiser decisions, and a deeper connection with ourselves. How non-reaction leads to emotional intelligence, inner peace, and personal freedom. When a person refrains from reacting impulsively, they step away from the automatic, often unconscious patterns that typically govern emotional responses. These patterns, shaped by past experiences, conditioning, and habitual thought processes, frequently lead to knee-jerk reactions such as anger, fear, or anxiety. By not reacting, an individual disrupts this automatic cycle, giving themselves the chance to observe their feelings without judgment. This observation cultivates emotional intelligence because it requires recognizing and understanding one's emotions in real time. Emotional intelligence is not just about feeling emotions, but about being able to manage them skillfully, to understand their origins, and to communicate or act from a place of clarity rather than confusion. Non-reaction fosters a kind of emotional clarity. Instead of being swept away by swirling emotions, one learns to witness them as passing experiences, much like clouds drifting across the sky. This witnessing stance is empowering because it reveals that emotions are transient and do not have to dictate behavior. In this way, non-reaction is a gateway to inner peace. When emotions no longer control us, the turbulent inner storms calm, allowing a quieter, steadier state of mind to emerge. Inner peace is not merely the absence of conflict, but a profound harmony with oneself and the present moment. It arises naturally when we're no longer at the mercy of our reactive impulses. Non-reaction nurtures personal freedom in a fundamental way. Reactivity is a form of captivity. It binds us to external circumstances and other people's actions, leaving us vulnerable to manipulation and internal chaos. When we break free from this, we reclaim our sovereignty. Choosing not to react is an assertion of one's power to decide how to engage with the world rather than being dragged by its demands. This freedom is liberating because it means that our emotional state and sense of self are not dependent on external triggers, but anchored within. This practice of non-reaction also encourages mindfulness, which is the quality of present moment awareness without judgment. Through mindfulness, individuals can notice subtle emotional cues before they escalate, enabling conscious responses aligned with values and wisdom. The space created by non-reaction is fertile ground for thoughtful decision-making and compassionate understanding, both towards oneself and others. It reduces conflict because when reactions are tempered, responses become more measured and less likely to exacerbate tensions. The power of not reacting transforms the nature of human experience. It shifts us from being reactive beings caught in cycles of emotional turbulence to being mindful creators of our internal landscape. This transformation enhances emotional intelligence by deepening self-awareness and self-regulation. It cultivates inner peace by reducing emotional turmoil and fostering a calm centeredness. And it grants personal freedom by releasing us from the chains of external provocations and internal compulsions. To live with the power of non-reaction is to embrace a path of greater wisdom, resilience, and authenticity. How to respond consciously instead of reacting instinctively. The power of not reacting impulsively lies in the ability to create space between stimulus and response, a moment where thoughtful consideration replaces knee-jerk reflexes. When we react instinctively, we often act under the influence of strong emotions such as anger, fear, frustration, or anxiety. These emotions can cloud judgment, distort reality, and lead to decisions that might escalate conflict, cause regret, or create misunderstandings. Instinctive reactions are typically the result of conditioned responses shaped by past experiences, biases, and survival mechanisms that were useful in certain contexts, but may not serve us well in modern social or personal settings. This automaticity strips away our power to choose how we engage with the world and others. Conscious responding, on the other hand, emerges from a place of mindfulness, an open, non-judgmental awareness of what is happening both externally and within ourselves. It involves recognizing the triggers that prompt an instinctive reaction and intentionally shifting our focus from the immediate urge to the broader perspective of the situation. This pause allows us to tune in to our emotions without being overwhelmed by them, to analyze the facts rather than assumptions, and to connect with our values and long-term goals before we speak or act. One of the most important aspects of responding consciously is self-regulation. This requires emotional intelligence, the ability to identify and understand our own feelings, to manage emotional impulses, and to empathize with others. By developing emotional intelligence, we gain tools to interpret situations more clearly and respond with compassion and clarity rather than defensiveness or aggression. It's a way to transform potential conflicts into opportunities for growth, connection, and problem-solving. Responding consciously demands cultivating patience. In today's fast-paced world, immediate gratification and quick reactions are often rewarded, but this can come at the cost of depth and quality in our interactions. Taking a breath, slowing down our thought process, and allowing time for reflection empowers us to respond in ways that are aligned with our highest intentions. This doesn't mean being passive or avoiding confrontation when necessary, but rather choosing the most constructive and authentic way to engage. The power of not reacting is also deeply tied to developing a strong sense of self-awareness. By understanding our habitual patterns and the triggers that cause us to react, we can begin to dismantle automatic responses and replace them with deliberate actions. This process often requires introspection and sometimes even unlearning old ways of responding that no longer serve us. As we grow in awareness, we build resilience and emotional flexibility, making it easier to handle stress and uncertainty with grace. In relationships, responding consciously can radically shift dynamics. Instead of escalating tension through reactive outbursts, conscious responses foster understanding and mutual respect. This approach encourages active listening and thoughtful communication, where both parties feel heard and valued. It creates space for dialogue rather than defensiveness, opening the door to empathy and collaboration. Beyond personal interactions, the power of not reacting can influence how we engage with the world at large. Whether confronted with criticism, injustice, or stressful circumstances, maintaining a conscious stance helps us act with integrity and purpose rather than from reactionary impulses. It allows for creative problem-solving and the ability to respond in ways that contribute positively rather than perpetuating cycles of negativity. Learning to respond consciously rather than react instinctively is a lifelong practice that invites us to live with greater intention and freedom. It enhances our emotional well-being, improves our relationships, and empowers us to act from a place of clarity and strength. By embracing this power, we reclaim control over our actions and choices, fostering a deeper sense of peace and connection in a world that often demands quick and automatic responses. Chapter 4. Practicing the Art of Inner Detachment. Mindfulness invites us to become deeply aware of the present moment, to observe our thoughts, feelings, and bodily sensations without judgment or immediate response. This heightened awareness creates a space between stimulus and reaction, offering a rare opportunity to choose how we engage with our inner world and external events rather than being swept away by habitual emotional impulses. When we consider emotional grounding, mindfulness acts as a stabilizing anchor that keeps us rooted amid the chaos of fluctuating feelings. Instead of being hijacked by anxiety, anger, or sadness, mindfulness allows us to notice these emotions as transient experiences rather than permanent states. This shift in perspective is crucial because it diminishes the power of reactive patterns, which often stem from unconscious conditioning or survival mechanisms. By witnessing our emotional responses with curiosity and acceptance, we foster resilience and create a mental buffer that softens the impact of distress. Breathwork seamlessly complements mindfulness by connecting us directly to the physiological processes underpinning emotional states. The breath is unique in that it is both automatic and under our conscious control, making it a potent tool for modulating the nervous system. When emotions run high, the breath often becomes shallow, rapid, or erratic, feeding the cycle of reactivity. Through intentional breathwork, such as slow, deep inhales followed by gentle exhales, we can activate the parasympathetic nervous system, which calms the body and mind. This calming effect serves as a foundation for emotional grounding, allowing us to engage with our feelings without being overwhelmed. Breath work acts as a bridge between body and mind, reminding us that emotions are not purely mental phenomena, but embodied experiences. By tuning into the breath, we increase interoceptive awareness, the ability to sense internal bodily signals, which enriches our emotional intelligence. This internal attunement helps us recognize subtle cues before emotions escalate, enabling a conscious pause where we might otherwise react impulsively. This pause is the essence of the power of not reacting. It transforms automatic responses into thoughtful actions. In daily life, practicing mindfulness and breath work cultivates a habit of responding rather than reacting. The simplicity of these practices belies their profound impact. Even a few mindful breaths in moments of tension can recalibrate our emotional state and prevent destructive patterns from taking hold. Over time, this cultivates greater emotional stability, clarity, and a sense of inner peace. It also deepens our capacity for empathy and compassion, as when we are less caught up in reactive loops, we become more available to understand others without judgment. The power of not reacting is not about suppressing emotions or becoming passive. Rather, it is about embracing the full spectrum of human experience with presence and grace. Mindfulness and breathwork give us the tools to navigate emotional storms with a grounded steadiness that preserves our integrity and nurtures well-being. They remind us that in the space between stimulus and response lies our greatest freedom, the freedom to choose how we live and relate to the world. Cognitive reframing. Cognitive reframing is a profound mental process that allows individuals to view events, situations, or experiences from a different perspective, often leading to a transformation in emotional response and behavior. At its core, cognitive reframing involves shifting the way we interpret an event so that it no longer triggers the usual automatic reactions dominated by the ego. The ego, with its natural tendencies towards self-preservation, defensiveness, and attachment to identity, often colors our experiences with judgment, blame, or emotional distress. When we engage in cognitive reframing, we step away from these ego-driven narratives and open ourselves to a more neutral, objective, or even compassionate viewpoint. The power of not reacting impulsively or emotionally is intricately linked to this concept. Most people's immediate reactions to challenging situations are deeply rooted in their ego's need to protect itself or assert control. This might manifest as anger, frustration, defensiveness, or withdrawal. However, when we practice seeing events without the ego's filter, without the need to defend our self-image or insist on being right, we can respond with greater clarity and calmness. This detachment from the ego's impulse creates space for reflection rather than reaction. By cognitively reframing, we acknowledge that our initial interpretation of an event is not the sole truth. Instead, it is just one version, often biased by our personal history, fears, desires, and insecurities. For example, if someone cuts us off in traffic, the ego may immediately label the other person as rude or disrespectful, sparking anger and resentment. But if we reframe the situation, considering that the driver may be rushing to an emergency or simply made a momentary mistake, our emotional charge diminishes, allowing a more peaceful internal state. This process of cognitive reframing also requires humility and openness. It demands that we question our assumptions and recognize the limits of our perspective. It invites us to adopt a stance of curiosity rather than judgment. This can be challenging because the ego thrives on certainty and control. Yet, by loosening the grip of the ego, we cultivate resilience. We become less vulnerable to the emotional turbulence caused by unforeseen events or other people's actions. An essential aspect of seeing events without ego is understanding that our identity is not tied to every thought or feeling we experience. The ego often conflates what happened with who we are. Cognitive reframing separates these two by suggesting that events are external facts, while our reactions are internal responses that can be chosen or altered. This distinction is empowering because it means we are not prisoners of our initial perceptions or emotional impulses. Instead, we have the capacity to interpret and respond in ways that serve our well-being. Cognitive reframing opens the door to empathy and compassion. When we are not consumed by ego-driven defensiveness, we can more easily consider others' perspectives and intentions. This broader understanding softens interpersonal conflicts and enhances relationships. We start to see that others' actions are often reflections of their own struggles and fears rather than personal attacks. The practice of cognitive reframing is not about denial or suppressing emotions. Rather, it is about acknowledging our feelings without allowing them to dictate our reactions automatically. It's about cultivating mindfulness, a present moment awareness that allows us to observe thoughts and emotions without becoming entangled in them. Through mindfulness, we create a mental distance from the ego's reactive patterns, and cognitive reframing becomes a natural extension of that awareness. Cognitive reframing is a powerful tool for emotional regulation and mental freedom. By learning to see events without ego, we diminish the power that external circumstances have over our inner peace. We become active participants in how we experience life, choosing interpretations that foster growth, understanding, and tranquility rather than chaos and suffering. This shift in perspective is not only liberating on a personal level, but can ripple outward, influencing the way we interact with the world and the energy we bring into every encounter. Transforming trigger into insight. Emotional alchemy is a profound concept that invites us to transform the raw, often uncomfortable experiences of emotional triggers into powerful insights. It's a process of taking the base metal of our immediate reactions, anger, fear, frustration, and through mindful attention and inner work, turning it into the gold of understanding, growth, and wisdom. This transformation lies at the heart of what many call the power of not reacting, a skill that fosters emotional resilience and deep self-awareness. Emotional alchemy begins with the recognition of a trigger. A trigger is any stimulus, an event, a word, a tone, that evokes a strong emotional response within us. These responses tend to be automatic, sometimes overwhelming, and often unhelpful if left unchecked. What happens in those moments is like a chemical reaction inside us. Emotions ignite quickly, fueling impulses to defend, attack, withdraw, or react in ways that may not serve our best interests. The power of not reacting, then, is about creating a space between the stimulus and our response, a pause where transformation can begin. Instead of immediately reacting to the emotional charge, emotional alchemy invites us to observe the trigger with curiosity and compassion. This means noticing the sensations in the body, the tightening chest, the racing heart, the clenching jaw, without judgment. It means acknowledging the feelings that arise, whether it's anger, sadness, or anxiety, without trying to suppress or escape them. By doing so, we step into a kind of emotional laboratory where reactions can be deconstructed and examined. This mindful witnessing weakens the automatic chain reaction and empowers us to choose a different path. In this reflective space, insight starts to emerge. The trigger, which once felt like an overwhelming assault, becomes a messenger carrying valuable information. We begin to see that beneath the surface of irritation or hurt lies unmet needs, unresolved past wounds, or deeply held beliefs that shape our perception of the world. This awareness is a crucial alchemical ingredient. It reveals not only what external circumstances provoke us, but also the internal stories and patterns that color our emotional experience. Transforming triggers into insight is not about denying or ignoring emotions, but about honoring them as guides. Each trigger holds the potential for self-discovery. For example, repeated irritation with a colleague might point to deeper feelings of being undervalued or a need for clearer boundaries. Anxiety triggered by uncertainty may unveil a longing for control or safety. These revelations can lead to profound shifts in how we relate to ourselves and others. We gain clarity about our vulnerabilities and strengths, and this clarity fuels conscious choices rather than reactive behaviors. This process also nurtures emotional intelligence, the ability to recognize, understand, and manage our emotions effectively. Emotional alchemy encourages us to move beyond victimhood or blame and toward ownership and empowerment. When we resist the impulse to react defensively, we cultivate patience and empathy, not only for others but also for ourselves. This deepened emotional literacy enhances relationships, reduces conflict, and fosters a sense of inner peace. The power of not reacting and practicing emotional alchemy is a practice of liberation. It frees us from the tyranny of our emotional impulses and the repetitive cycles that keep us stuck. Rather than being swept away by the waves of reaction, we learn to ride them skillfully, using each surge of emotion as a stepping stone toward greater wisdom. Over time, this leads to a transformation not just of isolated moments, but of our whole emotional landscape, allowing us to live with greater authenticity, resilience, and grace. Setting energetic boundaries. Setting energetic boundaries is a vital aspect of maintaining emotional well-being and personal power, especially when navigating interactions with others. This practice involves recognizing and respecting the invisible lines that separate your internal emotional and energetic space from that of those around you. Understanding what belongs to you and what belongs to someone else is foundational to mastering the power of not reacting impulsively or out of alignment with your true self. Energetic boundaries act like a protective shield that keeps your energy intact, preventing it from being drained or polluted by external influences. When you fail to establish or maintain these boundaries, you risk absorbing emotions, judgments, and tensions that are not yours to carry. This absorption often triggers reactive patterns, anger, anxiety, defensiveness, because your system mistakes another's energy for your own. The key realization is that other people's emotions, opinions, and dramas are theirs alone. Their fear, anger, or frustration does not have to infiltrate your inner calm or sense of stability. To clearly set energetic boundaries, you must first cultivate awareness of where your energy begins and ends. This involves tuning in to your feelings and physical sensations as clues. When you notice tension, heaviness, or discomfort rising within you, it could be a sign that you're inadvertently holding onto someone else's energy. Recognizing this distinction allows you to consciously release what does not belong to you. You might visualize a boundary, such as an energetic bubble or a fence, that protects your space without shutting you off from compassion or connection. When you hold firm to your energetic boundaries, you reclaim the power of choice in how you respond, or whether you respond at all. The power of not reacting is rooted in this ability to observe without immediately absorbing or mirroring external energy. Instead of getting swept into the emotional tide created by another person's outburst or negativity, you maintain a grounded, centered presence. This doesn't mean ignoring or dismissing others, but rather interacting from a place of clarity and control. It's a conscious decision to preserve your inner balance rather than giving your energy away through impulsive reactions. The distinction between your energy and theirs also fosters healthier relationships. By not over-identifying with others' emotional states, you prevent codependency and emotional exhaustion. People around you benefit as well because you respond with greater authenticity and calm, rather than with reactivity that can escalate conflicts. Setting energetic boundaries creates a dynamic where each person owns their feelings and actions, reducing the pressure to fix or absorb others' issues. This practice extends beyond just emotional exchanges. It applies to environments and situations too. For example, when you enter a charged room or a stressful conversation, your ability to maintain energetic boundaries protects your mood and perspective. You remain present without being pulled under by collective tension. Over time, this leads to a stronger sense of self and emotional resilience. You become less susceptible to external chaos because your energetic borders are clear and respected. Setting energetic boundaries is a form of self-care and empowerment. It acknowledges your sovereignty over your internal world and honors that of others. It's a continuous process of learning, adjusting, and asserting what feels safe and nurturing for your energy. When you master this, you embody the power of not reacting, not as a suppression of feelings, but as an intelligent response that preserves your integrity and peace. This power transforms how you engage with the world, allowing you to navigate challenges with grace and unwavering strength. Scripts and phrases for navigating conflict with calm. One of the most effective ways to maintain calm in conflict is through carefully chosen scripts and phrases that help de-escalate tension. These phrases often serve as emotional anchors, grounding both ourselves and others in a space of reason rather than reactivity. For example, beginning a conversation with an acknowledgement of the other person's feelings, such as saying, "I hear that this situation is frustrating for you," or "It sounds like this is really important to you," can diffuse defensiveness by showing empathy rather than opposition. This acknowledgement does not mean agreeing with every point, but it signals respect and openness, which paves the way for a calmer dialogue. When the urge to react with anger or defensiveness arises, it can be helpful to employ scripts that pause the momentum of conflict rather than escalate it. Simple phrases like, "Let me take a moment to think about that," or "I want to understand your perspective better before I respond," serve as gentle but firm signals that you are choosing reflection over reaction. These statements allow your mind to settle, reduce emotional heat, and encourage a more measured response. In moments where the conversation risks becoming heated, redirecting focus to shared goals can be powerful. Saying something like, "I believe we both want to find a solution that works for everyone," or "Our goal here is to understand each other better," reminds both parties that the conflict isn't about winning, but about connection and resolution. These phrases foster collaboration rather than confrontation, helping to shift the tone toward teamwork. When feelings of frustration or anger bubble up internally, silently repeating calming mantras or grounding phrases can help maintain composure. Phrases like "stay calm," "stay open," or "respond with kindness," not reaction, can be repeated mentally to reinforce a calm mindset. Using such scripts internally supports external calmness, allowing you to navigate conflict with grace rather than escalating tension. It's also useful to articulate boundaries and needs without blame. Expressing yourself with I statements, such as, "I feel overwhelmed when conversations get loud," or "I need a moment to process before we continue," keeps the focus on your experience rather than assigning fault. This method diffuses defensiveness and encourages understanding, as it invites others into your perspective without provoking resistance. When confusion or misunderstanding arises, clarifying rather than assuming can prevent conflict from deepening. Phrases like, "Can you help me understand what you mean?" or "I want to make sure I'm hearing you correctly," invite dialogue and demonstrate a commitment to comprehension rather than judgment. This approach opens space for connection and often softens strong emotions on both sides. The power of not reacting also comes from the ability to choose silence when appropriate. Sometimes the best script is the one unspoken, pausing to breathe, collecting your thoughts, and allowing the emotional intensity to subside before responding. This restraint can prevent reactive outbursts that would otherwise fuel conflict. When silence is coupled with calm body language, like steady eye contact, relaxed posture, and measured breathing, it communicates control and empathy without words. In addition to verbal scripts, nonverbal cues play a vital role in maintaining calm during conflict. Nodding to show you're listening, keeping an open posture, and moderating your tone to be soft yet steady all contribute to a peaceful atmosphere. These physical signals reinforce the calming effect of your words and your overall intention to resolve rather than exacerbate the issue. It's important to remember that navigating conflict with calm doesn't mean suppressing your feelings or avoiding difficult conversations. Instead, it is about recognizing the power you hold when you don't react impulsively, when you step back from the emotional edge and respond with intention. This power can shift the dynamic, turning conflict into a space where growth, understanding, and stronger relationships can emerge. Daily practices to build the non-reactive muscle. Building what can be called the non-reactive muscle is an ongoing daily practice that transforms how we engage with the world around us. It's about cultivating the ability to pause, observe, and choose a response rather than impulsively reacting to stimuli, whether external events, people's words, or our own inner emotional surges. Developing this non-reactivity starts with awareness. Becoming more mindful of the automatic reactions that arise within us is the first step. It requires tuning into the subtle sensations and thoughts that precede a reactive outburst. This can be done through simple moments of stillness in the day, taking a breath, closing the eyes for a few seconds, or simply observing the sensations in the body when triggered. Over time, this awareness sharpens, enabling one to notice the early signs of agitation or emotional charge before it escalates. Practicing mindfulness meditation is a powerful way to strengthen this muscle. By sitting quietly and observing the breath, thoughts, and feelings without judgment or attachment, the mind learns to witness experiences rather than get swept away by them. This practice rewires the brain to create a spaciousness between stimulus and response. It helps train the mind to respond consciously rather than react reflexively. Another critical daily habit is self-reflection. At the end of the day, or during moments of calm, reflecting on situations that provoked a strong reaction can shed light on triggers and habitual patterns. Understanding why certain things evoke irritation, anger, or anxiety allows one to address the underlying beliefs or fears fueling those reactions. This insight is empowering because it shifts the focus from external events to internal dynamics, where true change can occur. In the practical flow of daily life, cultivating patience is essential. Patience softens the immediate urge to react. When faced with provoking situations, consciously slowing down before responding, taking a deep breath, counting silently, or even stepping away briefly, creates a mental buffer. This buffer becomes the space for deliberate choice rather than knee-jerk reaction. Engaging with compassion, both toward oneself and others, further reinforces non-reactivity. When we recognize that everyone is navigating their struggles and limitations, it becomes easier to let go of the impulse to judge or lash out. Self-compassion allows forgiveness for one's own reactive moments, fostering a gentler approach to personal growth. Extending this compassion to others can defuse conflict and open the door to more harmonious interactions. Language and self-talk also play a subtle but influential role. Observing the words we use internally when triggered, whether harsh, blaming, or fearful, can reveal how our mind gears up for reactivity. Consciously shifting that internal dialogue toward more neutral or positive phrases can reduce the emotional charge and calm the nervous system. For example, replacing "this is unbearable" with "this is uncomfortable, but I can handle it" gradually rewires the mental scripts we live by. Physical practices that calm the nervous system complement mental habits. Regular exercise, deep breathing techniques, yoga, or even simple stretches can lower overall stress levels and increase one's capacity to remain centered amid turbulence. The body and mind are intimately connected, so nurturing one supports the other. Over time, embracing discomfort rather than avoiding it is key. Non-reactivity doesn't mean suppressing emotions or becoming indifferent. Rather, it means allowing feelings to be present without immediately trying to escape or control them. Sitting with discomfort, observing it with curiosity instead of fear, builds tolerance and emotional strength. Living with a sense of purpose and grounding in one's values also fortifies the non-reactive muscle. When you have a clear understanding of what truly matters, fleeting provocations lose their power. Your reactions become aligned with your deeper intentions, not momentary impulses. The practice of cultivating non-reactivity is a holistic daily engagement with the mind, body, and spirit. It calls for gentle patience, continuous self-awareness, and compassion. The power of not reacting unfolds as an evolving capacity to meet life's inevitable challenges with calmness, clarity, and wisdom, rather than being tossed about by every external or internal wave. This strength, once developed, becomes a foundation for peace, authentic connection, and purposeful living. Chapter 5. Living above the noise. When you stop reacting to everything, a profound shift begins to unfold within your mind, emotions, and life as a whole. At first, it might seem like a simple act, just not responding impulsively or emotionally to every stimulus, criticism, or provocation. But the reality is far more transformative and far-reaching than it appears. To stop reacting is to reclaim control over your internal world. Instead of being tossed around like a leaf in a storm by every external event or opinion, you become the calm center amidst chaos. This shift reduces the emotional roller coaster that so many people experience daily. Without the constant flood of reactive emotions, your mental space clears, allowing for a deeper, more considered response to life's challenges. This space cultivates patience, mindfulness, and a level of equanimity that makes previously overwhelming situations manageable. One of the most significant changes is how your relationships evolve. When you no longer react impulsively, communication transforms. You listen more deeply and respond with intention rather than instinct. This can diffuse conflict before it escalates and build stronger bonds based on understanding rather than defensiveness or misinterpretation. People often feel more respected and valued when they are met with calmness instead of knee-jerk reactions, creating an atmosphere of trust and mutual respect. In the broader context of personal growth, not reacting opens the door to self-awareness. By choosing not to immediately react, you give yourself the chance to observe your feelings and thoughts objectively. This creates a pause, a moment where you can ask, why am I feeling this way? Is this reaction serving me or hurting me? Such introspection is a key ingredient for emotional intelligence and can foster resilience as you learn to manage your inner landscape rather than being ruled by it. When you cease reacting to every trigger, you also conserve your energy. Emotional reactions, especially negative ones like anger, frustration, or anxiety, are draining. They consume attention, disrupt focus, and often lead to regrets once the heat has passed. By stepping back, you preserve your vitality for pursuits that truly matter, enhancing productivity and overall well-being. Another profound effect of not reacting is the change in how you perceive the world. The incessant need to respond often distorts reality because reactions are colored by biases, fears, or past wounds. As you practice non-reaction, you develop a clearer, more balanced perspective. This clarity can lead to wiser decisions, as you're not caught in the emotional fog that clouds judgment. Spiritually or philosophically, the power of not reacting aligns with many traditions that teach detachment, not in the sense of indifference, but a healthy separation from being controlled by fleeting emotions. This detachment leads to a deeper sense of peace and freedom. It's a liberation from the habit of being a slave to external circumstances, allowing you to live with greater authenticity and purpose. In practical daily life, this shift can change how you handle stress, criticism, and conflict. Instead of escalating tensions, you become a source of calm and reason. This change often surprises others and commands respect in both personal and professional environments. What changes when you stop reacting to everything is that you regain your power. You transform from a reactive participant in life to an intentional creator of your experience. This transformation fosters inner strength, emotional balance, and a profound sense of peace, all of which ripple outward to improve your relationships, choices, and overall quality of life. The power of not reacting is, in essence, the power to master yourself and live with intention rather than impulse. Creating relationships, careers, and a life based on intention, not impulse. Creating relationships, careers, and a life grounded in intention rather than impulse is a profound practice that requires mindfulness, self-awareness, and a commitment to deliberate action. At its core, this approach is about harnessing the power of not reacting immediately to external stimuli or internal urges, but instead choosing responses that align with your deeper values and long-term goals. In relationships, living with intention means moving beyond surface-level interactions and emotional reflexes. It involves taking the time to understand your own needs and the needs of others before responding. When you stop reacting impulsively to conflicts or misunderstandings, you create space for empathy, patience, and clearer communication. This intentional pause helps dissolve the patterns of knee-jerk defensiveness or anger, allowing connections to deepen based on mutual respect and genuine understanding. Over time, relationships built on this foundation are more resilient because they are nurtured by conscious choices rather than fleeting emotions. The same principle applies to career development. Impulse-driven decisions, such as abruptly quitting a job out of frustration or jumping on the latest trend without consideration, often lead to instability and dissatisfaction. By contrast, cultivating a career with intention means setting clear, reflective goals that reflect your passions, strengths, and values. It involves thoughtful planning and regularly reassessing your progress, adjusting your path with foresight rather than haste. Intentional career building encourages you to invest in skills, relationships, and opportunities that genuinely resonate with your sense of purpose. This steady, purposeful momentum fosters not just success but fulfillment. Extending this mindset to life as a whole is transformative. A life led by impulse often feels chaotic, reactive, and fragmented, as decisions are made based on immediate emotions or external pressures. When you learn to pause and choose your responses, you cultivate a sense of agency and control over your narrative. This intentional living requires developing awareness of your triggers, desires, and fears so that you can consciously decide what kind of person you want to be and what kind of life you want to create. It means aligning daily actions with your broader vision, even when faced with distractions or challenges. This way of living also nurtures emotional resilience. Instead of being tossed about by every external event or inner turbulence, you develop the capacity to observe without being overwhelmed. This ability to witness your thoughts and feelings without automatically reacting gives you the power to break free from destructive habits and make wiser, more compassionate choices. The power of not reacting is a power of choice, choosing how to respond to the world rather than being controlled by it. It invites you to step into a space of intentionality where every interaction, every decision, and every moment is an opportunity to shape a life that reflects your true self. This mindful approach fosters deeper relationships, purposeful careers, and a meaningful existence, one where impulse no longer dictates the direction, but intention lights the way. Detachment versus indifference. Detachment, when truly understood, is not about shutting off emotions or withdrawing from the world. Rather, it is a conscious choice to create healthy emotional boundaries. It means observing situations and people with clarity and calmness, without immediately getting caught up in the whirlpool of reactive feelings. This space of non-reaction allows a person to respond with wisdom and compassion instead of impulsive judgment or frustration. Detachment fosters an inner freedom, a kind of emotional sovereignty where you remain grounded and steady, regardless of external chaos. When you are detached in this sense, you do not lose your caring or your ability to love. In fact, you enhance it because your love becomes less about clinging or control and more about acceptance and understanding. On the other hand, indifference implies a lack of care or concern. It's a state where one emotionally withdraws, not out of choice or awareness, but because of apathy or numbness. Indifference distances a person from others in a way that diminishes connection and empathy. It shuts down the heart rather than protecting it, leaving relationships cold and unfulfilling. Indifference is often a defense mechanism, a way to avoid pain by not caring at all, but it ultimately creates isolation and misunderstanding. Unlike detachment, which can deepen love, indifference erodes it. The magic of non-reaction emerges when we embody detachment rather than indifference. By refraining from immediate emotional reactions, especially those driven by anger, fear, or hurt, we create a pause. This pause is a powerful space for reflection, understanding, and emotional regulation. In this space, we can listen more deeply, see more clearly, and choose responses that are rooted in kindness rather than impulse. Non-reaction is not passivity. It is an active practice of mindfulness and emotional intelligence. It is the strength to remain present with whatever is happening without being overwhelmed or controlled by it. When we do not react immediately, we stop feeding negative cycles of conflict and misunderstanding. We prevent ourselves from saying or doing things that harm others or ourselves in moments of heightened emotion. This restraint can be an act of love because it honors both our own boundaries and the dignity of others. Over time, this practice softens tensions and builds trust. People begin to sense a calm steadiness that invites openness and safety, which are fertile grounds for authentic love to grow. Non-reaction nurtures compassion, not just toward others, but toward ourselves. When we step back from reactive emotions, we stop harsh self-judgments and allow ourselves the grace to heal and learn. Detachment encourages self-awareness and emotional maturity, helping us distinguish between what truly matters and what is just noise. This clarity strengthens our capacity to love freely without being entangled in unnecessary drama or expectations. The power of not reacting teaches us that love is not about clinging tightly or trying to control outcomes. It is about presence, acceptance, and gentle strength. Detachment provides the foundation for this kind of love by helping us remain centered and clear-hearted amid life's inevitable ups and downs. Indifference, in contrast, closes off the heart and leaves us disconnected. Choosing detachment over indifference transforms non-reaction from a passive withdrawal into a powerful expression of love and emotional wisdom. It is a practice that, when embraced, can lead to more harmonious relationships, inner peace, and a more compassionate world. Mastering non-reaction as a lifelong path to peace. Non-reaction is not about suppressing emotions or pretending to be indifferent. Rather, it is about cultivating a deeper understanding of our internal processes and external triggers. When we practice non-reaction, we learn to witness our feelings, thoughts, and impulses with gentle curiosity instead of immediate judgment or attachment. This creates a spaciousness within ourselves, a mental and emotional buffer that prevents us from being swept away by reactive patterns that may cause harm or distress. In this space, we find the opportunity to choose responses that are more aligned with our true values and intentions, fostering harmony both within and in our relationships with others. The power embedded in non-reaction is also a source of immense personal freedom. Reactivity often binds us to past wounds, fears, and conditioned responses, effectively chaining us to the same old narratives that limit our growth and peace. When we learn to not react, we dissolve these chains and open ourselves to the present moment as it truly is, free from the distortions of habit and knee-jerk emotional responses. This freedom creates a fertile ground for wisdom, compassion, and resilience to flourish. Walking this path is not always easy, for the mind is naturally inclined toward reaction as a survival mechanism. The habit of immediate response to stimuli has been deeply ingrained through evolution, culture, and personal experience. Yet, it is precisely by gently and persistently cultivating non-reaction that we retrain our nervous system and condition our minds to a new way of being, one that embraces patience, understanding, and presence. This process requires dedication and compassion toward oneself, recognizing that setbacks and moments of reactivity are natural and valuable teachers rather than failures. Mastering non-reaction is a lifelong practice because life will continually present new challenges, triggers, and opportunities for growth. Each moment offers a fresh chance to deepen our awareness, to choose stillness over chaos, and to respond with clarity instead of confusion. Over time, this practice weaves itself into the fabric of who we are, transforming our relationship with ourselves and the world around us. It becomes a way of living that radiates peace, balance, and a profound sense of inner strength.